Probably.
Good morning and welcome to Monday, October 18th already. Board of Public Works and Safety. Clerk, roll call please.
Eaglin.
Here.
Courtney.
Here.
Carlo.
Here.
Okay. Full board. Board, have you had a chance to consider the minutes from the October 4th, 2021 meeting? You were not here.
I was not here.
So.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that the minutes for the October 4th, 2021 meeting be approved as submitted.
Okay. I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Getting into new business, we have a professional services agreement with Thomason Associates and the Walker Collaborative. I'll invite Nicole Shell here to give a presentation on this contract.
Good morning. So this agreement is between the City of Madison and Thomason and Walker. They're two consultants that we have chosen to help us with updating our historic district design guidelines. We have a grant through the DNR Preservation Office to work on this. Their quote came in within our budget. So the total amount is $45,485. Of that, there's only a portion of that the city would pay for itself. The rest would be covered by grant funds.
The grant monies have been already approved through council, is that correct?
Yes.
Give us a little background, Nicole, on what the design guidelines are, how often they're updated, and what you want to accomplish with this particular interval of revisions.
Sure. So the board currently uses design guidelines that were created in 2009. It's the only design guidelines the city's ever had. So they have not been updated since then. So this process will help us just bring them into the 21st century and really focus on current preservation practices, because some of the elements that they recommended in 2009 aren't the best practice anymore. It'll also include adding more modern materials for approval, which our current design guidelines don't allow. So you'll see under the scope of work, there's 4 phases. First will be they're going to review our current documents and have a couple public meetings, and then they're going to draft new design guidelines, and then they'll present those to the public. But we're hoping that we can incorporate all of the changes that the board's previously talked about in the last couple of years, and really get them updated so that we probably don't have to do this again for another 10 years.
The last time the city went through this process, the goal was to merge the commercial and residential guidelines. Is that still under consideration now with this?
It is. Staff feels like that would be easier for the public to only have to look for one design guidelines versus 2, but it's something that we'll discuss.
And did I read in here or somewhere else that the Historic District Board of Review, did they form a guideline subcommittee to help work with you and the consultant on the whole process?
We haven't yet, so we did have a subcommittee who reviewed the proposals for the consultant selection process. I anticipate those same members, who doesn't know it yet, Mike was on that, will be part of that subgroup that will do the design guideline review. But I think that will just be easier having a smaller group than the entire board.
I think so too. And in conjunction with the design guidelines, have we already left the contract for the revision of the Historic District Survey?
Yes. Yeah, so Lakota Group out of Chicago is updating our survey. They've actually already been here once. 2 of their members were down last week and completed a large section of Main Street and Jefferson Street. They'll be back several more times to complete that update, but they are moving along.
Okay. And will this process include perhaps further evaluation of what are staff approvals versus what goes to the full board?
That would probably be a 3rd step, updating the guidelines, and the survey is kind of step 1 and 2.
Okay. A lot of good information will come from both the historic district survey as well as the design guidelines, and the goal is to continue to make this a informative, educational, and much more fluid process between staff, the Historic District Board of Review, and the community. You guys are doing a great job. I mean, that's a great committee. You're doing a lot. There's been a lot of progress made with regard to staff approvals, which I think has helped the process tremendously. And I'm glad to see that all the work is going there to get it updated, because over time, things change, and particularly when you're talking about the Historic District Survey, which hasn't been updated in probably 20 years or so.
At least that. We currently use the survey sheets from the NHL district, which was completed in 2004.
2004, so almost 20 years ago, and then the design guidelines, I think you said 2009?
Yes.
Right around 2009, so every now and then it's good to take a fresh look at things, because nothing is completely static forever.
You think the deadline or projected completion date of the timetable for June 30th is, you think that's?
That is a requirement for our grant, that we have to be complete by then. And the schedule you see there was presented to the consultant, and they agreed with it in their submittal.
The last time we went through the process, seemed like it took on a life of its own, took a really, really long time, had a lot of what I felt were controversial elements to it at the time. So anxious to see what the recommendations are here, but this process that you've laid out seems also to be a much more efficient process to get us to design guideline updates.
Yeah, we're really taking what's already been done and building on that, having a couple more public meetings, and really getting a final product through
I think last time we did this like 2 or 3 years, and then we got kind of heated out at some of the public meetings.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have one staff person who has regular duties during the day, and then trying to tackle that all by myself was what stretched that out.
Well, I think there was also the creation of a massive design guideline steering committee, which in itself didn't have consensus on how to move forward, and that's also why it stalled out.
Right, yeah, the subcommittee for this process will be much smaller.
I can tell Mike's looking forward to it.
He is.
And I might say I was on that steering committee at the time.
Yeah, me too.
And it was a big, it was a
Me
big
too.
committee. So,
It was huge.
Nicole, is this the same firm that done the last
It is,
design?
yes.
They're from Tennessee, aren't they,
Yes.
if I remember, Nashville?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're familiar with Madison, so.
Yes, they are. At least the Thomason portion of it, Walker, it is a new partner with him. But yes, they have familiarity with Madison.
Any comments or questions for Nicole? Otherwise, we'll take a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Thomason Associates and the Walker Collaborative.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve this professional services agreement between the city of Madison and the project team of Thomason Associates and the Walker Collaborative. And that you have the authority to sign.
I second Dave's
Okay.
motion.
Any additional discussion? Any comments or questions from the audience? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Let me pause for just a second too, and I thought we were going to conference in our attorney, Joe Jenner, who is out of town.
I don't have his cell, but if you give it to me, I can do that.
Okay. We'll pause for just a second while we move to our next item of business, and while we're getting ready to talk about this, Dave Adams was going to be here representing Salvation Army, but I do not see him.
Mayor,
Yep.
got a phone call from Dave, and he's gonna be unable to appear.
Oh, okay.
And, something
Hey Joe,
else
it's
came
Nicole.
up.
I got you page into
He
the
said he's
Board
going,
of Public
he
Works
talked
meeting,
about
okay?
that time he's going to Cincinnati. He said.
Yeah, talk to both of them.
You wanna grab that mic and point it there, and we'll,
He's on the phone.
Joe, are you there?
Yes.
Welcome, Joe Jenner, by telephone. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Joe. We are working through the agenda now. We just spoke about and approved the professional services agreement for the historic guidelines. And now we're moving on to discuss the emergency winter shelter MOU with the Salvation Army. I'd like to go ahead and discuss this. What's presented to the board members here is a red line. This will be the third year that we have entered into a memorandum of understanding between the City of Madison and the Salvation Army with regards to our winter contingency and emergency shelter plan. You have a red line that shows the changes that we've made, which is predominantly about the dates of the agreement and the fact that over the course of the past several months, the Salvation Army has been working on making some upgrades to the building there, adding shower facilities. So shower facilities would be available upon completion of the remodeling of the shower room. And then there's also just 1 week, like there was in the past 2 years, where the shelter wouldn't be available. One of the issues we've had with using this Salvation Army location for the winter warming shelter is just the regulations they have, frankly, with regard to the temperature. That has not changed. In order for the shelter to be open, assuming they have enough volunteers to manage through the evening, it would be open if the temperatures reached 32 degrees or less by 5 p.m. We've talked about that with the regional officers of the Salvation Army to try to get that to be more perspective, which is if the temperatures are expected to be below 32 degrees any time during the night, they would open. We've not been successful doing that, but I want to keep that conversation going. But for today's purposes, we'll just present for discussion the review of the Memorandum of Understanding. We'll have some additional conversations with the shelter and the Salvation Army, again, about trying to work with them on the temperature, because as we know, sometimes it won't be 32 or less by 5, but once you hit 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, it could certainly be far below freezing, and that's where we want to be able to provide a service to minimize the risk for the vulnerable people who are out in the elements. So, if there are any comments or questions on the agreement, the red line from the last year's agreement, we can talk about them now. I'll bring this back at the November meeting for final execution while we finish up the discussions. Statistically, Salvation Army has done a good job in the past year of recruiting and training volunteers. That's been that initially was a problem, because they have to go through a safe from harm training, they have to pass background searches, and then they also have to be available to work, all night long in some instances. So I think that part of it's gone well. It is still what I would consider a rarely used shelter. What I mean by that is, in some instances, we may only have the shelter open 2 or 3 times during the span of a month because of the temperature, or because nobody signs up to use the shelter. And but we still need to be able to provide the service if it's needed. But on average, for when the shelter has been open, there would be anywhere from maybe 2 to 8 people partaking in the benefits of the warming shelter. So we still need it. We still need it with Salvation Army at that location. They also provide meals during that time, and now they'll be able to provide showers. So it's all heading in the right direction, but we still have work to do. We'll bring this back on the next agenda. Unless you have comments or questions now, we can address them.
Mayor, one of my questions was going to be typically how many takers do we have? and you pretty much answered that between 2 and 8.
Yep.
So, this agreement or memorandum of understanding, the Salvation Army they've reviewed this also, and
Right.
so they're on board.
We worked through the local captains here, and then also the Indianapolis and Chicago offices to finalize the agreement.
And you were talking about the temperature. That's also going to be one of my questions. How strict are they going to be on this 32 degrees? I mean,
They've been very strict on that in the past,
They have.
by that 5 p.m. We have been asking them, to consider a perspective. If we have a forecast that shows it's going to get below freezing, we want it to be open, but they have not moved off of the setting 5 p.m. as the time in which they'll do the temperature measurement. That point in time, not at 5 p.m. is it expected to get colder than 32 degrees, but is it 32 degrees or less at 5 p.m.?
So they're not very willing to.
They have not been willing
give
to
on the-
consider that, no. And part of the reason is we're taking a facility and modifying it for the use as a shelter.
Right.
It's not designed and built to be operated as a shelter. So they've made a lot of accommodations already, but it will, not service our needs entirely because we're restricted on how many people can be there depending upon the volunteers, and we're also restricted on whether or not it's going to open based upon the temperature at 5 p.m. So we still have work to do, but so far this is the third time we will have negotiated this agreement. They've not been willing to change the time of the day in which they measure the temperature.
It just, I don't know, just thinking out loud, 32 degrees at 5 p.m. versus 32 degrees at 7 p.m. At 7 p.m. the sun's down,
Yeah.
the temperature has started to drop, as opposed to 5 p.m. So,
Part of it is also the planning that's required.
right.
And that is about getting the volunteers. And they need enough advance notice to call in the volunteers. And, it's disheartening, I think, to the volunteers and the staff at Salvation Army when so much work and preparation has gone into opening the shelter and preparing to be there all night, and only maybe in some instances no one signs up for the service, or maybe they might have 6 or 8 people volunteering and one person signs up, or a couple people sign up and then they leave, right? And so that also, there's a lot of influence on how this shelter operates, and it is not as simple as it sounds, unfortunately. There's a lot of work. So the list I have here are 20 people who have gone through the Safe from Harm training, which takes a lot of time. And then again, they're committing to be there all night. The Salvation Army did allow us to split the shifts up instead of having it locked down basically from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We're doing 2 shifts, so you can have half as many people work a half a shift, for example, and that has helped. But it's a challenging environment to manage for a number of reasons.
Well, I appreciate the Salvation Army putting themselves available for this, and also the volunteers that have signed up to take the training and to volunteer to staff it. So.
Well, and I want to thank the community too, because we have a community compassion fund. So this winter warming shelter operation is funded almost entirely from donations for the bed kits and for all of the materials and so forth, and the expense of operating it with Salvation Army, and that has been through volunteers across the community.
Well, I think it makes sense to have one central location where everything, all your resources come together, and the resources can be dedicated to one particular spot.
Right.
So you're getting more efficiency and really more for your dollar there, so. As opposed to several different agencies or organizations, churches and different things going out and doing things on their own. Merging and pulling all those resources together under one umbrella is going to provide a better opportunity. So.
Agreed. Okay, any other comments or questions? No.
Do we need to pass this?
Well,
today,
what I'd like to do is just table it, table the action on it until the next meeting. So I move that we table action on the emergency winter shelter until the next meeting, at which time we'll finalize a couple of the elements that are in red line format now.
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Okay, any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, thank you. We have a guest here, so Kim Nyberg, who's not on the agenda, but we want to add her to the agenda with the Madison Area Arts Alliance, is here to request, I think, a closure of our Mulberry Street parking lot. Kim, you want to come up and talk about that, and we'll jump to that, and then that way you won't have to sit through 4 hours of discussion on the other
It's
items.
very interesting, so thank you. I've enjoyed this. My request today, I'm Kim Nyberg from the Madison Area Arts Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to nurturing our creative community and managing our cultural district that we have in the city of Madison. So my request is very simple today, and I hope that you have seen all of the beautiful things that are happening down on East 2nd and Mulberry Street in that city parking lot, the Mulberry Street parking lot. We are coming to a wrap up with that project, and we have an event Saturday, October 23rd, this Saturday, 2 to 4, where it's a very small collection of things, but it's a big celebration, and we are celebrating not only adding beauty and an extra attraction to that part of our city, but we're celebrating our creative people who made it happen and our donors. So my request is very simple. The street department and Gina and her team have helped us manage really all spring on through today, the parking situation down there. And we have just, people are great. The neighbors love it. And we have managed to keep everybody happy and to, hopefully, and to manage minimal closures of that parking lot. So Saturday, what we would like to do is close the north part of that parking lot, the north side, and as you know, that parking lot is huge. But we would like to just add another row for that time for Saturday, and we will set up beginning at 7 in the morning. We have a small stage. The Madison Music Movement is allowing us to use their stage. And it's going to be real simple, a tent, a table, a stage, and lots of wonderful celebration for this project. So that's my request, and look forward to your comments. I have
So you want the parking lot from 7 in the morning to like 4 p.m.?
we would probably, we'll have to take the stage down,
Okay,
so,
so
you know,
by
there's
7.
some tear down time.
So you won't need it
But
on
we would-
Friday, so we're gonna do all this on Saturday morning?
I think we
Okay,
can.
that'd be
You know,
good.
that was the conversation to
Yep.
close it Friday. That just seems like a lot, because Friday is very busy here, and we wanna make sure that we're not, you know, holding people back from enjoying Madison. So
Right.
we wanna do that, and I believe we can do this, real early in the morning on Saturday.
So you think 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., will that work?
I think that'd be great.
You just want half the parking lot, basically.
I think half, I mean, I think with
Don't know what that.
the way we're looking at it, you know, unless we have huge crowds, which, you know, we may, I don't think so, but it would be great. But I think the half would work.
If we each came down there, can we put our handprints and paint and do something?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, she is the, she's also the curator of the spot.
Here we go.
So, you wanna tell the board and the community a little bit about the spot, Kim?
Sure. Part of this project on Mulberry Street was to not only draw attention to an area of town where some people forget, you know, the side streets, Main Street is great, but our side streets are really good. So we were able, as a nonprofit organization, to find a place to have our office, but it's more than an office. So at 326 Mulberry, we have this wonderful little place, and y'all may remember it as the shoe repair. Teddy's shoe repair.
Shoe shop.
Yeah, the shoe shop. And
Yep.
boy, if those walls could tell stories, we could have a lot of fun there. But we renovated the space, and the space is used for our headquarters, but it's also used as a community meeting spot. And of course, COVID put a damper on a lot of our things, but that spot is open. It is a place where folks can meet. We can hold classes and workshops and gatherings for our creative community and our young people. We have a young people's group called the Creatives, and we're real proud of what we're doing. So thank you for this opportunity to plug the spot. And spot means supporting people of talent. That's why it's called the spot, 326. And we're right there close to the mural, so we can keep an eye on things, and we can really help that neighborhood rise up. So thank you.
I think it's great that you're working with also the music community here in Madison, because it's a growing art in our area, so.
The M3 organization has done so much for promoting music and getting that on the
Great.
forefront. Yes, it's a good time in Madison. So
It is.
thank you very much.
I know the Hens family, I talked to a couple of them, they're real impressed with the wall. So,
Yeah.
Do you support people of talent who are experts in finger painting?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
One of the things, Mayor,
curious.
is that everybody matters. That's what our goal is. Everybody has a hidden talent, and so.
That's my hidden talent, and
that's
stick
a-
figures.
Hey, let me tell you.
Fantastic.
Thank y'all so much.
So we're gonna, we don't have a resolution drafted, but what would our resolution number be, clerk, if we did a resolution?
It would be 61 or 62.
Okay, so
I can give it 62.
we'll give it 62. I'd like to move in a verbal resolution that we approve, verbally, resolution 2021-62 for the closure of the north side of the Mulberry Street parking lot from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 23rd, to celebrate the mural project and supporting people of talent. Hosted by the Madison Area Arts Alliance. We appreciate everything you're doing, Kim.
Thank you.
I will second the mayor's motion.
Any discussion? Joe, any questions on that?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Yes, she just gave us an idea, she needs picnic tables, fresh girls coming from us.
Thank you, Mike.
Do that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Kim, I'll see you there.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Governor Holcomb loved the mural project. He was here last weekend, so he
It's
loved it.
causing quite a stir.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on. Alley vacate procedure. I'd like to call to the stand Director of Utilities, Brian Jackson.
Have you guys had a chance to look through that at all, the packet and the form? And that's basically all I did, was try to put together a new procedure with an application and a packet to give to people when they want to vacate one of our alleys or streets or right-of-ways. Joe's looked at it briefly, the mayor and I met on it. I need to maybe tweak a few things, but before I do that, I want to make sure you guys didn't have anything that you think may need modified before
Well,
I do a final version.
The only thing I might add, you might want to add to the application form is that this would be revision, like number 1. So if you change it, then you can always change to revision 2. You'll use that in the bottom right-hand corner. So that way you know that you're on the current revision when you pick up your applications.
So on the form, put a
Yes.
revision number at the bottom.
But everything else seems to be in order. I mean, it's something we need, and the guidelines look good.
Well, I don't think we need any special, I mean, I just wanted to get a board's approval, but I don't want to do it today because I want to make a few changes that the mayor and I discussed. We can go over those if you want with them, or.
Well, I think for the community purpose, what we'll mention here is what we're talking about is a procedure regarding the request for an alley or a street public right-of-way vacation. And it is largely governed by state statute. And what Brian has done, and I really like what he's done here, is try to take the state statute and then create a process that is easier for people to follow, to start the process and follow through along the process, because there are several steps that they absolutely have to follow, and there is costs involved, and it would end up here after a staff approval, then it would end up with the clerk's office, and then it would go to city council. So there is a whole process that is a little more challenging than maybe what some people might think. But Brian has done a really good job of outlining it here. And then what he and I talked about was modifying this outline so that, you know, we prepare the actual petition for the right-of-way vacation to city council.
Yeah, the ordinance, yeah.
The ordinance, and that is done with our city council. And I'd also like to propose that a deposit of $500 be made at the time the application is made in order to cover the costs for the legal preparation and the advertisement that's going to be necessary in order to actually get it onto the city council agenda. So these are a couple things that Brian is incorporating. It's not a fee that we're charging, but per state statute, they are responsible for the costs that are incurred in order to draft the legal documentation and do the advertising.
The $500 fee, that would be refundable, correct? Joe, I mean, are we okay with that, or?
Well, that's something that I'll want to look at before we get anything approved, because there's a possibility anytime you charge a fee or something of that nature, it usually has to get city council approval. So we may need to look at that a little closer. So yes.
Okay, I figured that was gonna be the one thing that we'd have a question about, because I knew we talked about that before.
Will this include the 2-mile buffer?
No,
It will not include that.
that we can't vacate.
Just inside city limits.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's in there.
I looked, it probably is.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that we've needed for forever, is a process, you know, a written procedure to go through. That was one of my questions as I was reading through this. There's several places where it addresses the fees that the petitioner has to pay certain fees for advertising and for recorder's fees at the courthouse and things like that. So I was wondering, well, how's
Right.
the city gonna know that these fees have been paid?
Right, well, that goes through the clerk treasurer's office, and we're gonna know that beforehand. We're gonna have to tell them that that's something we don't do now.
Yeah.
That we're gonna have to start implementing, because the city's basically been paying all these costs, the public notice, the recordation fees, all that, when in actuality, per state statute, the person asking for the vacation is. Now, I said everything's in the city limits. Now, the city does own some things outside the city limits now, but I believe that would be transferred by deed and not be vacated, right, Joe?
I would think so, yes.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, this mainly deals with alleys, streets, and right-of-ways that the city owns, because there's no real deed to that, like your street out here. There's not a deed to that. That's just owned by the city. It was dedicated probably when they did the subdivision in 1810 or 15, or whenever they did this area out here.
Well, and I think the one misconception of what happens when you do a vacation is essentially, if you vacate an alley, there is essentially a line drawn down the middle, and half of that alley goes to the property owner on that side, and the other half goes to the property owner on that side. So it essentially becomes part of the property.
Correct. And they would be responsible for drafting those easement descriptions and having the surveys done, and, which we would really need before they bring it before the Board of Public Works anyway, if we get that far. What I'm trying to do here is circumvent some of these people coming before when we really, like if there's utilities or anything in there, the neighbors don't want it done. Let's usually stop the vacations. Because they are public for all the public, not just for one person.
Right.
Right.
So today was just a preliminary discussion about it, no action.
Right,
And we
well,
will-
that's something I wanted to ask Joe. I mean, do we just need to get, just present it to the board and get a board of public approval of this vacation procedure that the city's gonna use? And
That's the one thing I need to check and see is, the only thing that, I would say generally, yes, if the individual is just paying for, certain costs, then that's one thing, but if they're paying for, other things, what we may wanna do is come up with whatever a cost structure is for those things, instead of a deposit that could be, could be refundable. I don't know what the best way to do that is, so that's the only thing we'll need to examine, as to whether or not it's just a Board of Public Works thing, or if it's a City Council thing.
okay,
Sounds good. We'll keep this on the agenda for the next meeting.
Brian, like I said, I think this is, it's a great, procedure to start. Something I was wondering possibly would help, maybe would be a checklist of items.
well, that's kind of
It's kind of what this is.
yeah, that is
But
your
it's
checklist.
more detailed than maybe what a check sheet would be. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I mean,
I know when I was-
that's as detailed as it gets.
Yeah. Well, I know when I was on the planning commission years ago, we came up with a checklist, which at that time we'd never had before. Somebody was coming in proposing a subdivision. Well, it had to go before city department heads to get signed off on it. Well, we didn't have any kind of a checklist or any kind of a document that showed that the department head, the city department heads had reviewed it.
This isn't for the city, this is for the person that wants the vacation.
Right,
They're probably gonna need to hire surveyors, maybe attorneys,
right.
and, to me, I'm going above and beyond giving them this, just to help them and help us streamline everything, so we don't end up incurring the costs as we have in the past. I mean, I don't know what you mean a checklist, there's nothing for us to check, if they do all these things.
I think what Board Member Carlo was talking about is previously, we had I think what was used, which was step-by-step process for an alley vacation.
Right.
That was step 1 through step 6, for example.
Right, and now it's just step 1 through step 13. I mean, I can put step on there, I guess.
Well,
But-
Brian and I will work on it when we bring it back next
Well, it's gonna be an improvement because I think several times
Yeah, because here's what we currently have.
we have people come before the board requesting a vacation. I mean, basically, they give us no information.
Right.
Mm.
That's
So
why.
the more information that we can have to look at, the better off our decision's gonna be. So.
Right, and that's why on the vacation principles and the summary, I'm hoping to deter some of those people from coming, because, if your neighbor opposes it, then it's probably not gonna be approved, or if there's a sewer line or a water line in the alley, it's not gonna be approved.
Yeah.
I mean, and
And that should be
that's
the
what.
first step.
Right, well, it's in there, that's why I tell them,
Yeah,
if that's the case, then you're not gonna get approved, and that's why I'm hoping to cut them off from ever getting here.
before you ever go out and hire an attorney and surveyors and everything else, you better check with your neighbors and get.
Right, that's why I want to give them that application and the packet, they read through the packet, and they're like, well, don't wanna really do that, I don't think it's gonna succeed.
Mhm.
All right,
Brian, I'll give you some comments or additional comments, and we'll.
okay, and then we'll get with Joe on the fee thing and how we're wanting to do that, if we wanna just maybe compile a list of what the costs were, but Joe, what I was telling the mayor about the costs is sometimes the survey can get complicated, or the legal documentation, or the title research can get complicated, I don't know. But if they have trouble surveying it, I don't want us to charge X amount of dollars and it costs 3 times that amount.
Well, that's why I propose it as a deposit, because technically, we're not charging anything.
Right.
Right, it's the courier that's charging for the advertisement. It's the courthouse that's charging for the recording fees. It's the attorney that's charging for the document preparation.
Right.
We're not charging for our time to shepherd it through the process. These are all third-party costs that are being reimbursed by the deposit.
Correct.
Yeah, a little clarification there, Joe. Okay? Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have a professional services agreement with IWORQ Systems, and Nicole Shell again.
You should
And we also have a
copy.
guest here, which is our Jefferson County surveyor, Mike Pittman.
Yes. So you should have a copy of the contract. I also provided a couple of slides about iWork. It is a online permitting software that both the county and Hanover has previously joined. So this will be the 3rd group in our area to use it. I believe Jennings County also uses it and has for some time. But we're going to be using their permitting software, their citizen portal, and their code enforcement software to get started. It gives us the ability to track everything online, receive complaints online, and then people can also track those code enforcement things that they put out. It really streamlines our process. Right now, our code enforcement is just ran by an Excel sheet internally, and this will increase those capabilities. But this contract for iWorks is a minimum of a year, and our total for this next year would be $12,500.
Before we get into the discussion, we might ask our county surveyor to maybe comment on what his experience has been with iWork. And Mike and I have had several conversations about it, and I think this is a time to really improve how we manage the building and planning department. And this cloud-based platform really helps facilitate that.
Mayor. First, I've got some sad news for you guys. The Winnebago that was east of town is gone.
Where'd it go?
It went into a dumpster somewhere. That's all I can tell you.
Well, Mike, thank you. Finally,
Well,
thank you very much.
It just disappeared. Let's just
disappeared.
leave it at that.
Okay.
It's gone. But as far as the iWorks, we signed our agreement about 6 weeks ago. We've already had 2 sessions with them on our adoption and going into their software. Very, very easy to work with. Both Building Inspector Josh Klein and Lynette Anderson, who's our zoning and planning person, and working. And basically, you'll take all those Excel spreadsheets you have, which are really nice to use when we had nothing but Excel spreadsheets. But now there are mechanisms in iWorks. You can automatically pull up due dates. You can look at everything. You look at past history. You can send all those old spreadsheets you got to them. They will load that in, tie it to the parcel numbers. So if you have a constant occurrence of complaints, you'll see that pop up. Same thing with building permits. You'll have all your building permits. If there's a complaint against a property where you've got a building permit, that will also pop up. And what we're doing now is we're loading all of our Excel data. They go straight to GIS, which you guys got GIS. All that data goes in. You don't have to enter anything. They do it for you. You give them the sheets, they put that in there and put that data in. Then going forward, you're putting the data in, but it's all populated by what iWorks does. And I'm very impressed with what they're doing. Jennings County's been using it since the beginning of last year. And not only the director of the department was singing praises of it, I got to talk to people that actually use it. They love it. And any changes or anything you need to make, they're very easy to work with. So I would heartily endorse what they're doing and what you're doing.
Well, I like the continuity that we get. If Hanover, Jefferson County, and the city of Madison are all in the same software, then I think from a user's perspective, there's going to be some familiarity there. Nicole and I sat through a demo last week with the two engineers with this company, or software, what you would call them, but managers. And, you know, we talk a lot about it in the context of helping us improve the management of our code enforcement. Because if you recall, recently we started, you know, a blight elimination program. We came up with nearly 100 properties that we identified that we've got to manage from a blight perspective, whether it's unsafe structures or nuisances. That's a real key element that motivated us to research this, because it's cloud-based, you know, it's very well organized, and it will keep as Mike was saying, a history of any complaints with that property. But we're also going to be able to identify, you know, how we solve that, and we'll get a reporting element out of that. That's just one element to Iwork that I think is also really beneficial.
Sure.
The other one too is the online permitting process that we can do now, reporting, scheduling inspections, and doing plan reviews. It's a leap forward compared to where we have been, which is primarily manually driven, Excel spreadsheet, all kind of saved down to a central file in-house here, and not accessible really when you're out in the field or as a manager, you know, out anywhere accessing the information where you need to access it. So this is a real leap for us.
The other thing too is when you're out in the field, it's cloud-based. So as long as you have internet,
Yep.
or you have access, if you got an iPhone or you've got a tablet, which we're going to get our folks tablets so that they can actually use it when they're out in the field. Take a picture. A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Take a picture while you're there with your tablet, and then you can load it up to Iwork. It's fantastic. So
Same thing with
been needed for a long time. Glad you guys did it. I got really interested when I saw Hanover and Jefferson County do it. We started talking about it, and it really fit in with the goals we had for improving the operations of building and planning, and definitely making a bigger investment in code enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Nicole? I'll move that we approve the contract for the professional services agreement with IWORQ Systems Community Development.
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Any additional comments or questions? Anything from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Nicole. And last up for new business is Main Street Road Project update by Deputy Member Gee.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
Just thought it would be a good time to update you as we near the end of this road project on where we are, and then I have a couple of other things for you as well. So update on the Main Street project, we're now into the road striping phase of the project. So a company called Traffic Control Specialists, they are a subcontractor for Amero Paving, which is over the entire job. They are actually in town today. I sent them striping plans a few weeks ago. They've been in town at least a couple of times, meeting with Kenny Washer on walking and driving the route to make sure they understand what we're looking for. And they are in town today marking final layouts. So you'll see them out, you'll see some little hash marks on the road that they're making today in the entire footprint. And they will begin what they call mainline painting as soon as they're done making the final marking. That could happen today, if not tomorrow, that they'll be finished. So they believe they can get that done in one day. What mainline will be are basically the long stripes. So the center lines, the fog lines, everything that they can just get on the road and go. There will not be any traffic interruption or lane restriction or closing related to this. It'll be one truck that'll basically drive down and lay the paint. It'll be followed by a chaser truck. It's a fast, dry, in-dot spec lane paint. It has reflective beads in it. It is not, typically we use the thermoplastic, which is the thicker application and is heated to the road. That does not adhere to liquid road, so this is reflective paint instead. It'll be dry within a couple of minutes on average, so not a lot of traffic disruption.
and it will happen during the day along with regular traffic. So we will just ask drivers to be aware, have a heads up that there's, striping going on, get in the opposite lane, but that's the only disruption we expect in terms of traffic. Starting Wednesday night and Thursday night, the same company will work from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and come back and do, when there's less traffic, obviously, to do crosswalks, stop bars at the stoplights, and the parking markings.
What date was that, Mindy?
Wednesday night and Thursday night.
Okay.
So they're actually out today posting the no parking signs for Wednesday night and Thursday night due to that 24-hour notice. But that will just be overnight. So overnight on Wednesday, Thursday, we request no parking. Obviously, they're gonna start at Jefferson. If they're done with that section, as soon as it's dry, people can park there again. But just to give them a clean workspace, that's mostly handwork. So we wanna make sure we keep them safe, and they're doing that at a lower traffic time of the night. They are going to do this work through the entire zone, so all lanes from Jefferson to the Crooked Creek Bridge. Any questions about that work
So-
that's going on?
Let's go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesday. Just quickly.
Tuesday, they hope they'll start,
Start the striping
the
for
long
the,
lines.
for the long lines.
Right.
Wednesday,
If they're not finished with the long lines, they'll finish that, and then Wednesday night, they'll start
okay,
the
parking
detail
start,
work.
okay. Okay,
Okay. The last section of this major project will be Hanover Hill, which will be crack seal and mastic. Mastic is, one of the products they used on the rest of the section of Main Street. That's the, product they apply with a box. It's a similar to crack sealing, but it's for the deeper cracks. So they'll be doing that on Hanover Hill, and they expect to be back. That's, again, that work is done by National Pavement Maintenance, which did, the Liquid Road application. They expect to be back on site probably first week of November. They had to leave this site to do a job they were contracted to do at the Indianapolis airport. So they will finish that and be back here 1st of November. I talked to Kenny Washer on that. He's actually fine with that timing. A little cooler will be okay for that application. As long as the road is dry, they can get that done, so that's not a problem. And on that job, they will have flaggers. They'll be working in one lane. They'll flag people around them, so I would just ask people to be aware, heads up, there may be a delay in traffic due to just them flagging people around, but there won't be any lane closures associated with that work. I don't have an estimate for you on how long that will take. I would think a few days, and they could get all of that section done, and that will be the final piece on this whole project. I have some miscellaneous notes and things I wanted to tell you about, if that's okay.
the national stop for a second
Sure.
and say, the Main Street project has been one of the more challenging ones we've done all across the city. So you've done a good job. Kenny's done an excellent job navigating that. A lot of traffic, a lot of closures initially, a lot of planning went into it, community meetings went into it. So thanks for all the work you've put into it, and I think it will pay dividends for us.
Absolutely. Okay, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I've received some comments that the liquid road doesn't appear to be applied correctly or thick enough. I would just say, I would mirror what the mayor said. Ken Washer has walked this entire route through the entire process and every day of application. Ken knows what he's doing. He has made sure that the product and all of the work that's been done has been done to our specs, NDOT specs, and then the manufacturer specs of the product. So liquid road doesn't adhere to thermoplastic. We knew that, so it went on and then it sort of wore off where the old striping was. We knew that was going to happen. That actually allows them to come back over and just see exactly where they're gonna paint. So they'll paint right over that and it will be fine. So in those areas where it looks like it's wearing off, it's actually, we were aware of that. That's where the new paint will go back. Between Broadway and the Incline Bridge, where we're going to do a new striping plan, the 3-lane, we actually paid a company to come in and remove that thermoplastic so that it doesn't show through and confuse drivers during the daytime or at night. We'll put new paint down. There may be places where you're going to see that because it actually was removed, but the new paint should be the only thing that's easy to see. And Liquid Road, I just wanted to say, because I've heard this a lot too. Liquid Road, the product itself has sand in it, and as it cures on the road, that sand comes to the top and lays on the top of the surface. So rain will wash it away, but as these, the striping company comes in, they have to have a clean surface to paint on, so they'll be using blowers. They'll hopefully blow off the rest of that. But I know that's another thing that looks like it's showing through, but it's really sand laying on the road, and you don't see that unless you're walking on it. There are a few areas I wanted to make you aware of if you're not already. On the far west end, on the north side, which was the last day they were working, there were a lot of mature trees there with a lot of shade on that road. So the first application of Liquid Road, I don't think dried completely in certain spots. When they came back and put the second coat on, it dried and they reopened to traffic, which all the traffic's concentrated in one lane there. It pulled up a little bit in certain spots. So we've worked with O'Mara Contracting on that. They've confirmed they are going to come back and repair that, fill that in, so that it won't be back to the old pavement in that area. And those are the only spots I'm aware of that there was any damage, other than the car chase that sort of scratched the surface out here. And I'll just tell you, this is changing as we've been in this meeting. I'm getting updates from Kenny, but we will, unless you object to this, on the far west end, west of the Incline Bridge, folks park in front of their homes there in the parking median, and to my knowledge, that's never really been marked as parking. So I think we should go ahead and mark that as marked parking, unless you object to that for some reason.
The west end of Main Street?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware we have any restricted parking down there, do we?
No, there's,
signs that
it's
says
just
no
a
parking?
shoulder, really, but it's where people park. So, unless you object, can we go ahead and mark those as parking spots for residents?
I don't have any objection.
No.
Okay.
It's gonna be a nightmare for people to find parking spots, but,
I think it may actually increase. Just,
pardon?
It'll organize it.
It may
Yeah.
organize it a little better for
Exactly.
them, and, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I told Kenny to go ahead and do that. I'm glad you agree. Last,
Anything to get more organization in our parkings.
right, right.
Then we'll start getting requests for handicap spots.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
that's-
not, we
That's
may
okay,
revisit,
at least now it's
we
organized.
may revisit,
Yeah, it's
so
organized.
designated parking or not.
Well, let me
Last-
ask you, when you're talking about striping, he brought up handicap,
Mhm.
I mean, is there a reflective blue that will be used in the future besides, you know, that line not being white, will change to blue?
If
for
it's a
handicap?
designated
Normally
handicap
it's
spot,
through
yes.
signage.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just
Like,
like.
unless there's a curb there, then they paint the curb.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's no
could be.
reflection
Okay.
in
Yeah.
that paint,
Okay.
but, I mean, if we did it on the street, that
Yeah.
we would, but I don't think we have any spots like that right now, other than, like that's marked on the street. Last thing from me is, speed limit.
Can I, before you go
Sure.
on to the speed limit, can I talk a little bit too about, the expectation? We've also received people contact us and say the road's not smooth enough. Well, it's not new asphalt. And what we had to go through to repair the road reveals its blemishes. Over 200 areas in the road had to be milled down, and there is some new asphalt where the base had eroded. And then it literally looks like Snake River Canyon with all the crack filling that had to happen because the road had not been maintained for 15 years, and so it was breaking apart everywhere. I mean, it looks, you'll see it. So we don't have a new road. This is just to extend the useful life of the road until we can get to a new road in 2026. It's not going to be smooth. It's not going to look and feel just like brand new asphalt. That's why we started a year ago with getting, asking the trucks to use the bypass to get around town, so that we could prepare for this to preserve the road. But it's got thousands of blemishes in it in that 4.5 mile stretch. That is going to continue to be a little rough. This is about trying to make it last a few more years. I just wanted to address that as you.
It's not a new pavement, but it's a lot better than it was,
Yes.
so.
I feel the same. I've driven
This has
it quite
been
a bit.
like I said,
It's
it's
not
been the
perfect, but I
longest.
do think it's better than
It's
it
been the
was.
longest running street project, one of the most expensive single road projects we've done, the most difficult to manage, just to buy us 4 more years on the road.
Right.
And that will fade and it'll discolor, but what we're trying to do is improve the integrity of the road itself, so that we can wait until 2026 when we get additional funds, raise additional funds to do a complete mill and re-asphalt. So just want to make that comment. Now you want to talk about how we are proposing to help deal with the speeding problem on the way west end.
Correct. So it's not, we're not requesting a change to speed limit, but there's signage as you come in on the west end of town from the east. There's a sign just east of the bridge that warns you you're coming up on a 30-mile-an-hour zone, but these people are coming down the hill at 50, 55. And then there is a begin 30-mile-an-hour zone at the other, basically at the corner on the other side of the bridge. And it has a solar flashing light on it, but, and this is Kenny Washer's suggestion, and Mayor and I agree with this, we want to move that back. So we would put the begin sign on closer to the bridge on the other side, probably where the warning is now, and then move the warning sign back to maybe closer to Kennedy's office, Dr. Kennedy's office. So just start that warning a little sooner.
And add rumble strips.
And add rumble strips, just to get people's attention, change it up a little bit, get them to think about slowing down sooner, which hopefully will keep them moving slower when they come around that corner and enter Main Street. Kenny just texted me that the county is in support of that change because it will help with wear and tear on the bridge. Slower speeds as people are coming across the bridge will help them as well, and they are responsible for that bridge. So we'll also do the same thing coming out of town in the west, because that's a 45-mile-an-hour warning and zone. We'll push those back farther west as well, and just keep that traffic on both sides of the bridge lower at 30. So it's just an extension of the zone, not a change to the speed limit. And our ordinance, I believe, references speed limits. And so what we may come back to you with is a zone extension where it says specifically where that zone starts and ends, but for right now, there's no ordinance change related to this.
It is about trying to manage speed so that they drive slower sooner when they make the bend and coming down Main Street. Instead of being 25 miles on average over the speed limit, they have enough early warning detection and alerts with visual and also with the rumble strips that they start decelerating before they get to the edge of town and come down Main Street heading east. That's something we want to try to experiment with, because traffic safety, trying to cross the street down there, there's golf cart traffic going in and out of the pickleball courts and the Elks down there. There's a spur off into the Elks, and there's that sudden curve, and all of us that grew up here, we know that there was a major traffic accident there probably 30 or 40 years ago that took the lives of a couple of young men here in our community. We need to do something to make that edge of town safer. This is a start, and it's an experiment to see if we can get people to decelerate.
And we have never had control or really much influence over speed limits or sign placement until we took over this road. So I'm gonna give each of you my notes, my outlines for this, just in case you get questions on any of what I've talked about from the public. So I'll make sure you each have a copy of this you can keep and hopefully answer any other questions or help me answer questions as people from the public have it, but we are almost done.
End of this week?
I like your ideas about moving the signage. But let me just say, I've got one of those flashing yellow lights, solar powered in front of my house on a speed limit sign.
Yeah.
And
It's ignored.
This is,
We're having conversation about upgraded signage and ways that we can make people take notice again of those kinds of signs. Rumble strips, I think, will help. Adding a rumble strip will get their attention physically, at least, if they're not paying attention to signs.
There's one on New Hill Road, and you notice it when you're coming into town.
Yes.
When the speed
there's a
limit.
progression of solutions, and combined with what we're talking about here about moving the zone back so they start decelerating sooner and creating the audio and visual alerts to do that. You know, that's going to need to be combined with law enforcement to start, you know, ticketing. There is technology we can use if it progresses to that, to where we can start measuring the speeding and ticketing automatically. If we have to do that, we don't want to go there, but we're trying to do something different, right? We know it's a problem. We've known it's a problem for 30 years. We've never done anything about it. Right. Let's start with maybe the most cost-effective way to change human behavior. But you're right. There's one right in front of your house, and we have the traffic studies that says at certain times of the day they're doing 20 miles over the speed limit right there. But well, hopefully the rumble strips will help change this thing too. But otherwise, we'll progressively have to attack it differently.
hopefully there, it's gonna be reduced from 2 lanes to 1 lane. I mean, you know, that should reduce the speed of the traffic. Now, where you're talking about on the western edge of town, you know, people coming from the hill, it's almost like comparing apples to oranges, you know, getting people to reduce their speed as they come into town and through the west end of town. So that situation there calls for something like rumble strips as a warning, along with the flashing lights and anything you can do. So I think it's a good idea. So
We'll see how it works. We'll be able to measure it.
But while we're talking about speed, it's a little bit off subject, or off of Main Street, I guess is the right comment, but 2nd Street is 30 mile an hour, west end. And I've had several people tell me it's way too fast.
Are we talking down by,
Broadway west,
okay,
it's 30 mile an hour. And there's several blocks there where there's no stops.
it's pretty tight parking too.
And it's tight, and there's kids, and they're going to the swimming pool, and they're, you know, when they were home. A lot of traffic, and of course a lot of people walk. And with the change on Main, that could divert some more traffic to 2nd. So I think it'd be good for the city to look into changing that to 20 mile an hour. Bond Drive is 20, 3rd Street's 20. I just think the time is necessary to reduce the speed on West 2nd Street also.
Okay, thank you.
I've had 2 neighbors, or 2 people who live in the neighborhood talk to me about it. I think it's time to look at that.
We can absolutely
Yeah,
do that.
and just, if I could chime in here, you know, one thing that we probably need to realize is the city council has a traffic committee, and, you know, maybe somebody needs to reach out to whoever the head of the traffic committee is and then bring some of these things up. Because really, speed limits, and stuff, I mean, I know Mindy and I talked briefly because, some of this will have to be changed because speed limits are outlined in our ordinance. And they're the kind of progression is to go to the traffic committee and then come through there. And so, yeah, I think that's just something to keep in mind, that maybe that needs to come up. And then, now the signage, that's a little different because we're not changing the speed limit, but, we're just maybe extending it a little bit. But, if we're talking about changing speed limits, that's kind of where that needs to start.
And we've counseled tomorrow night, so we can request traffic committee take a look at that.
The traffic committee today at 5:30.
Okay,
Good.
Thank you.
thanks, Carl. I'm gonna drop off a copy of this for each of you.
There's a semi going up West Street.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the new business that we have. Let's move on to claims.
Mayor, had an opportunity to review the claims. I'll make a motion that the claims be approved as submitted.
I'll second David's motion.
Okay, any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Under Mayor's comments, did want to mention a couple things. We do have the traffic committee today at 5:30. One of the things that Nicole and I are presenting is our downtown parking study plan to them that the redevelopment commission approved. That is intended to identify what our inventory of parking is, how it's being utilized, different ways in which it's being utilized on different dates, and then determine a strategy of what level of parking policy changes should we make, as well as should we make additional investment in off-street parking. So that's underway. We'll get a preliminary report on that by the end of November, then work through the balance of the year on refining it and coming up with some conclusions.
Mayor, real quick,
Yep.
while you're on the parking, I just had a question concerning the parking for Chautauqua weekend. Did you happen to hear any complaints on parking? I know that the Chautauqua didn't offer the parking at the Hilltop and shuttle visitors down like they normally did, I'm assuming because of the virus.
Right.
So that made parking downtown premium spots. Did you happen to hear any feedback on that, or?
I talked to some business owners about what they experienced. You know, we had police officers at a couple of the intersections on Saturday. We did ask the Chautauqua to do directional signing for parking, which they did. You're right about the shuttle service that was not offered because of virus-related concerns from the provider, but have not heard anything negative about how it was. It was a busy weekend, actually. We did move the pickup drop-off area off of Main Street at Vine and Main, where they used to be. I think having it down on Broadway Street worked a lot better, but people had to be prepared to walk a few blocks in order to get to the venue area because of on-street parking limitations.
Well, we had the big rain
Yep.
too that week, and, you know, we have several off-street fields that they, in the past, have used as parking. And I just wondered if some of those were taken out of service because of the wet conditions, and, you know, that's gonna affect the parking situation. So that was just my, you know, I mean, we did have a huge crowd, successful weekend, so.
It was a great weekend.
Okay.
The other thing I'll mention is Halloween. This Saturday is the city-sponsored Halloween festival at Bicentennial Park. There's a lot of work that's gone into that, and a lot of partnership across the city and financial support, so we're grateful for all of that.
So
that is this Saturday from 11 to 2,
30th.
which would be the
23rd.
23rd.
Okay, I was thinking it was on the.
That's just the Halloween festival.
Oh, that's the Halloween festival.
There's also
A lot of things going on.
there's also trick-or-treating at the campground, and there's many of the businesses on Main Street are participating in trick-or-treating on Saturday. And then the traditional trick-or-treat will be on Sunday, October the 31st, which is Halloween, from 6 to 8 p.m. So we have a lot of trick-or-treat plans being made across the community. I do want to mention the last thing, that is the Redevelopment Commission at last week's meeting took the first steps in facilitating expansion of Super ATV with the creation of a new TIF allocation district. So that will now make its way through the Planning Commission and City Council process for adding that project to the city's redevelopment plan. So we're grateful for all the investment there. It's a sizable investment that's gonna create a couple of hundred jobs and about $70 million of private investment over the next several years, so a lot going on there. Great news there. Just a lot going on around town. We're starting to wind down on some of the festivals, but Hannah, you're here. Did you want to say a word?
Yes, clearly
Okay.
in Halloween.
Like fine Halloween. Okay.
I want to make sure the Halloween festival is next Saturday, the 30th. So I don't know if you said this Saturday.
Oh, I thought it was the 23rd.
No, it's next Saturday.
Oh.
It's the 30th. So from 11 to 2, and then that same night is the Halloween campground event. So all the campers will be decorated. That's that same night, the 30th,
Okay.
from 6 to 8.
Festival is October the 30th, and traditional trick-or-treating is Sunday, October 31st.
Correct.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
making that clarification.
Also, there's in the article on the paper, I read that you mentioned several people interested in the Ruler's supermarket that have inquired about it. That's good news on the
We've
market.
gone through prospecting list. We've updated our pitch documents with new census information. And we'll continue, it's our top priority for downtown economic development. And there's a lot happening in that corridor. We've got a revitalization plan in that whole area that's really integral with the grocery store. We should be closing on the property that we're buying on the east side of the bridge by the end of the month.
I noticed the dumpster.
Dumpster been deployed there. So, yeah.
Deploy.
Any questions from me on the mayor's side? We'll move into public comments. If there's anybody here who'd like to address the Board of Public Works, happy to do so now.
No,
Thanks, Sheldon.
I'm good today.
Thank you.
I see none, so I'll make a motion with adjourn.
Next meeting will be Monday, November the 1st. Thanks everyone for coming, and
I'll
second
second
the
that
motion. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Lots of stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's